Hey, you guys. Welcome back to Rocket City Yardstead. If you're new, I'm Sarah. Welcome. So I thought I would give you guys a little bit of a garden update. Since last time we were together, we were getting ready for Francine. I don't know how well you can see behind me, but it looks like everything fared really well. So we did get pretty high winds with Francine. We had a whole day where lots of people had power outages and stuff like that. But the rain, for the most part, went to our west. We got maybe about an inch of rain. People about 45 minutes from us got over 9 inches of rain. They had to do water rescues, and I'm not really fully sure of everything that transpired, but I know that it was a major ordeal not that far from us. So while I'm grateful that we didn't have to deal with that amount of water, I'm thinking of the people who did, because I'm sure there's damage and all kinds of things that they're dealing with over there. So I need to do some harvesting this morning, and then I have a project in the house that I wanted to get to. But I thought I'd bring you guys out and just give you an update. Spending that time out here, it was worth it. So I do have tomatoes. Even this tiny little tomato's turning, but it's a tomato and it's turning. Got to be thankful for small things. But there are quite a few tomatoes out here. Most of them are paste tomatoes that I need to pick and bring in. Get them off before the leaf-footed bugs do. All summer I had trouble with my tomatoes setting fruit. They just weren't. I think they needed more fertilizer. I think I'm going to have to do a soil test and find out what's going on with my soil. But we get all that wind, and look up here. Above my cattle panel, there's a tomato hanging out, probably a good 9-10 feet in the air. I actually can't believe it made it through the wind in the weekend, but I'm very grateful. Also, you guys, look at this. Finally, I'm certain they needed food, because there's a tomato. Here's some tomatoes. A bigger tomato. Here. Here. It may be September, but we're finally getting tomatoes. Since I'm out here doing some harvesting, I thought I would show you guys. I have this one snacking pepper plant. You know, they're supposed to be like lunchbox peppers if you see those at the store, so they should probably be about this size. But I'm going to show you what they look like. This plant had looked stressed for a while, and I couldn't quite figure out what was wrong with it. It's looking beautiful again now, but this is what the peppers look like. You can see there's several, and they're just super tiny. They look like they should be a hot pepper plant, not a sweet lunchbox pepper plant. I did want to show you whatever has been going on with this plant. It looks a lot healthier now, and the new peppers are significantly larger. I don't really know what the cause of that is. If you happen to know what would cause that, please leave me a message, let me know, because I'm confused. I keep seeing more things out here to show you guys. So if you'll remember, I had this vine that I wasn't sure what it was, but I thought maybe it was a Maypop passion vine, and then I found out it really was. But it got stripped by the caterpillars, which is what I expected. It's got new leaves, so they didn't actually kill it. That's very exciting. In the last video, I mentioned all of my volunteer cowpeas that I had growing and that I couldn't remember their name. The variety I grew is called Red Ripper. And I brought you guys over here to show you. In that video, there were no flowers on them that I could find. They are covered in flowers today. They're so beautiful, and so I just wanted to show you guys what they look like. Here you can see all these cowpea flowers up close. Aren't they gorgeous? So I don't know if you all know, because I didn't until fairly recently, that noodle beans or asparagus beans, long beans, they go by lots of different names. They're actually a cowpea. And when I learned that, it made perfect sense, because the flowers look a lot like these. So I have one more thing I want to show you guys outside before we head in to tackle some stuff in the house. My green stock. I wanted to show you an update on that. Look at all the green beans. So exciting, you guys. So I'm back in the house. I've got my harvest. Not a huge harvest, but a nice amount of paste tomatoes and cherry tomatoes. I got another cucumber. So a nice little harvest there. But my big project in the house right now that I need to get done this morning is we're going to make gluten-free hamburger buns. So I have a very big outside project that's outside of the scope of this YouTube channel that I'm working on today. So at some point you may see me today looking like a disaster. But I know that by the time we get to dinner, and I'm just going to want quick and easy. And so these hamburger buns are going to make that possible. So I've got my water already measured out, and I also have my almond milk. Now this recipe calls for whole milk, but I can't do whole milk. So we're going to sub almond milk in this hamburger bun recipe. And I need to heat this up a little bit because it calls for it to be lukewarm. I'm going to try about 20 seconds in the microwave and see what that does. But this is crazy to me, to be perfectly honest with you. If you've watched other videos, you know I've had to go back to being gluten-free, and I haven't done a whole lot of gluten-free baking. I had been making lots of sourdough things up until earlier this year, and minimal ingredients and just really simple, at least I thought so. And now it's kind of crazy to me that it takes all of this to make 8 hamburger buns. But it has great reviews, this recipe does, and I'm really hopeful it's going to be good. So I thought we should make it together and see how it turns out. And I will absolutely link the recipe below if it's good. If it doesn't turn out great for me, I'm still going to show you because you should know if it is hard to make or not. So I'm going to check on that almond milk. Yes, the 20 seconds on the almond milk was just right. The recipe calls for 120 grams of almond milk, and it calls for instant yeast, which I don't have. I have active dry yeast. So they do tell you what to do in that case. And you want to bloom your yeast in your milk. So I need, let me look. It does tell you. I think it says to add a tablespoon. Yes, a tablespoon of sugar, and then add your yeast. And so that is what we're going to do. And then we'll just watch for our yeast to get foamy. And then it'll be ready to proceed with the recipe. If you have instant yeast, then you just kind of throw it into the recipe and it works right away. Hence the instant. But this is not ideal having just little yeast packets, but I have only been experimenting with the gluten-free baking and seeing if I can actually make things I really like. And so I didn't want to buy a big thing of yeast if I didn't really like what I was getting as a product. So I do actually have to open a second yeast pack because it calls for 10 grams of yeast if you're using active yeast, and a pack is only 7 grams. So I need 3 grams from this extra pack. My scale is not measuring my yeast. I'm very concerned about that. I can tell I've put about half, so that'll be close, and I'm just going to call it on adding that. Hope this is not a sign of things to come that my scale is acting up, because I need to weigh all of my ingredients here. See how this goes. So I'm going to set this aside for my yeast to bloom, I already weighed out the water I needed. It calls for 280 grams. And then I also, to that, need to add psyllium husk. And I'm telling you, my scales got me a little nervous here. I may get a little bowl to weigh that out in just to make sure, rather than add it directly to my liquid. Never had my scale do this to me before. So, real life though, right? Sometimes your electronics act up. So I need 20 grams of the whole psyllium husk. Weigh in now, so that's good. So this is one of the things that acts as a gluten replacer. If you're unfamiliar with gluten-free baking, and it's going to go into our water. I'm going to stir that all up. And it will actually turn the water into a gel. Let this sit here and gel. And now I can start mixing together my dry ingredients. So the first of our dry ingredients is 230 grams of tapioca starch. It also tells you alternative starches you can use. And so I'm not 100% sure I have enough tapioca starch. But if I don't have enough, I have potato starch, which is one of the alternatives. And we will use some of that. But I think I'm going to be just fine on the tapioca starch. Had plenty. That's fantastic. The next thing we need is 135 grams of either millet flour or brown rice flour. I have brown rice flour. So make sure I tear out my scale and we'll measure out our 135 grams. Next is our sorghum flour. We need 60 grams of that. Next, we're going to add the rest of our sugar, which is 50 grams of sugar. Eight grams of baking powder. I'm finding this a lot with gluten-free baked goods, that the yeasted recipes still call for something like baking soda or baking powder to help with the rise. 7 grams of xanthan gum. This is another yeast replacer. Not yeast, I'm sorry. Gluten. It helps with the lack of gluten. And 12 grams of salt. All right, so there is all of the dry ingredients. And they just need to be mixed up well. So I'm just gonna give these a bit of a stir. Get the rest of that tapioca out of the lip of my bowl. And now we add our gelled psyllium husk. Isn't that crazy? Our foamy yeast mixture. Do want to make sure and get all of that. 2 eggs. And finally, make sure I tear out my scale again. 50 grams of a neutral tasting oil. I'm using avocado. And now we can get this on the mixer. All right, so I'm gonna put this here in the mixer, get it locked in, get it all mixed up. Do just want to get my recipe an extra look. So this does say that we are going to mix it until the ingredients come together, and then we're going to mix it for another 6 to 8 minutes until it looks smooth. So I do need to grab a spatula because it says make sure you clean the sides down. I am gonna go ahead and scrape the sides here. If you are familiar with gluten-free baking and have any recipes you love, please clue me in, because I feel like I'm just searching on the internet and looking for things that look good, that have good reviews, but in the age of AI and recipes even being written by computers, sometimes it's hard to know. I'm very certain this is a recipe by a real person. So I'm really hopeful these are going to turn out well. Definitely sticking down in the bottom there. So I just want to make sure we get all those dry ingredients incorporated. I am going to set a timer for 6 minutes. We'll start there and let this knead, and we'll see what it looks like after that. Ooh, didn't mean to turn it all the way to high. It's been 6 minutes, and the recipe says we should have a nice smooth dough, and it is. And it's also very wet and sticky, which the recipe says it should be. So now it's time to dump it out onto a floured surface and shape it into buns. The recipe is very clear that you want a well-floured surface here to turn your dough out on. So I'm going to use some of my brown rice flour and get this all nice and floured. It also said make sure your hands are well floured. So we will do that as well. But I'm going to scrape this out of the bowl and onto a silicone sheet here. Silicone mat. Definitely sticky. The side of my hand was not floured well, so probably going to have to rinse it off. But that's okay. Flour my hands good. Try and get this into something of a ball. That way we can divide it. This is supposed to make 8 hamburger buns. I'm gonna rinse my hands off and start fresh. While my hands are clean, I'm gonna go ahead and get my baking sheet out and get it lined with a piece of parchment paper. Pull it up so it'll stay in place. That's ready to go. And I think I'm going to pour some flour out onto the counter so I have something to grab from. Don't get my bag dirty. I'm going to sprinkle this, get my hands floury. and go back to forming my ball here. A nice even ball so we can divide these up evenly. All right, I went ahead and cleaned my bench scraper up so I could get my hands on it and then not get so terribly messy. We're just gonna cut this in quarters and then cut each quarter in half. Not aiming for perfection here, but I am aiming for close, you know? So now we roll each quarter into a ball. And try and keep them nice and floured so we don't lose a bunch of dough on our hands. It is quite the trial. Any dough that sticks to your hands wants to steal from the dough ball. So I'm trying to be very careful about that. So there's one. I'm just going to go through and turn the rest of these into balls. And once they're shaped, I'm going to put them on my cookie sheet and make sure they have plenty of room between them. Our rolls are all shaped, our hamburger buns, and now I just need to lightly cover them with some plastic wrap. Cutter doesn't want to work. Now these say that they need to rise for about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half, and we're looking for them to double in size. If you're familiar with baking at all, any kind of yeast baking, you know that temperature is really key there. And my house is quite warm today. We're going to be in the mid to upper 80s. And so I will probably check on these at about 45 minutes, just because there is a good chance that they are going to rise more quickly today. So I'll meet you guys back here then. I let these end up proofing for an hour. And aren't they really nice looking? I'm really encouraged. So now we're going to put an egg wash on them. Just gently brush them with the egg. And the recipe calls for sesame seeds. I don't have just sesame seeds, but I do have everything but the bagel seasoning, and I think that would work really well. So that is what I'm going to sprinkle on these. And then they will go in the oven at 375 for about 15 minutes. So I'm going to get these all egg washed up and sprinkled, and we'll get them in the oven. You can see a couple of them are touching here. In the recipe, she warns about that and says you can put them on separate baking sheets if your baking sheet's not quite big enough. I don't mind if my buns are a little bit misshapen because they touch. That's not a big deal to me. But if it matters to you, you might want to put them on 2 baking sheets. Now I'm just going to sprinkle everything bagel seasoning on. Okay, my timer's gone off. Oh my goodness, these are beautiful, you guys. I'm very excited about this. See these hamburger buns? Oh, let's move them over here to the stove. They're beautiful. They say that you can eat them now. We're going to have them for dinner tonight. And so it says get them on a cooling rack and let them cool. But I'm very excited about how these look. All right, you guys, several hours later, I just got cleaned up from doing what I needed to do outside. It's been a long day and I'm very excited to have a quick, easy dinner with hamburgers. But I sliced one of these open and it's beautiful. It's nice and airy and it's so light. I'm going to bring it over and try and show you guys what the inside looks like. Now, I will say it was just a little bit gummy, which I have read is more common when you use rice flour. And the recipe called for millet flour, but said you could substitute brown rice flour. And that's what I had. So that's what I did. But I think in future, when I run out of my brown rice flour, I would like to get millet flour and try it again. But I just toasted it for a few minutes on like a medium setting, and that took care of the gumminess. So that is great. And I can't wait to put these burgers together. But I'm going to go ahead and slice this one up and see if I can show you what I'm talking about. I can actually feel it when I cut through. I don't know if it will actually come through on camera, but it's just a little bit gummy here. But like I said, a little bit in the toaster and they're perfect. All right, you guys, so here's the real moment of truth. Time to give it a taste test. I didn't fix my burger on camera. I figure everybody puts whatever toppings they like on. But here we go. It's like eating a burger with a regular bun. It's really fantastic. So that's very exciting. They will get added to my repertoire. And I will definitely leave the link for these down in the description box. It's from a website called The Loopy Whisk. I would definitely say if you need gluten-free hamburger buns, give them a try. They're super good. So thank you for hanging out with me today in my garden and in the kitchen. And I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. Bye.